Hey Creagears, Roboy here, and welcome back to a brand new custom Amiibo video. For this video, I wanted to try and finally tackle another side order project. Because I think this will only be our second ever side order custom, correct? And then those got made into actual official Amiibos, even having similar poses to ours. I still cannot believe that. But since we did not have that much time for our usual custom Amiibo month this year, how about we start looking into doing it this January or February with a side order theming? Oh, yeah. Well, I hope you guys are ready for a custom Amiibo of my second favorite side order character, Cipher. So, let's get started. This is going to be another Amiibo that starts from the 3D printer. I would have liked to have tried to make him completely by hand, but if you remember how he's mostly transparent, I think this is for the best. But before anything else, we first have to do something that's mostly saved for last, adding the eyes. Since his pupils are inside of his transparent body, I was able to make it so the eyes are printed in two separate pieces. So now I can add the pupils to the base figure using some orc blood. And after 3 layers or so to get the coverage we need, I can close the eyes off by adding a little bit of UV resin and then placing the other half of the eyes on top. Then I blast this with a UV flashlight to cure the resin. And now comes the fun part, making it all glossy again. Since directly from the printer, these transparent prints look really nice and clear and glass-like, but as soon as you do the little post-processing and cleaning onto these figures, they quickly lose a lot of that transparency and become all cloudy. So to bring this back, I found this trick to add a little bit of UV resin to a cup and brush on a small layer onto the clear parts that you want to have transparent again. Then you leave this for 1 to 2 minutes to let the resin equalize itself, or if you have a highly detailed thing like mine, you should have already reached that timestamp by the time you are done with this whole figure. Once it's nice and smooth, you can then blast it with something that can cure the resin, like the UV flashlight again, or in a UV chamber like this. Not too long, or the resin is going to yellow out, especially the ones from the original print, but long enough so you can make sure that the resin is cured all the way through. After that, you should have a nice and clear print. If you then want to add some color to this figure, you can use some Citadel contrast paints through the airbrush to add a layer of color on top, but thanks to these contrast paints, it can still leave a lot of the transparency. We've used this for the water effects on our Salmon Run Amiibos, and lots of other parts where we still wanted to have a little bit of transparency, but we did want to add some color to these figures. So for the little jellyfish on the side, we used some Pterodon turquoise to paint his little body. Then for Cipher, I used a Celestium blue for his body. And some Gilliman flesh for the tips of his fingers and feet. But sadly, this just did not work out. Not only was the Celestium blue not purplish enough, and the Gilliman flesh way too brown and not pinkish or peachy enough, I also applied all of these paints way too thickly. Here in this bright light of my airbrush studio, I did not think it looked too bad, but even the glossy coat on top could not save it anymore. As soon as I took it home and looked at it in some actual normal lighting, yeah, I could see that I've applied way too much contrast paint to the figure to let enough of that transparency shine through that makes Cipher's design so special. But this time I'm going to start by applying a mix of both Gilliman Flesh and Doomfire Magenta to the fingertips, the middle of the head, the tips of his toes, and the end of the balls. I mean, do they not look like that? Anyway, after I'd also upgraded the paint for the body by mixing the Celestium Blue with some Leviathan Purple this time around. With the 50-50 mix, this was the perfect solution to get that purplish blue tone for his body. With a lot thinner coats, and by also avoiding the Gilliman Magenta parts, I was able to perfect the airbrushing for Cipher. Now all that was left was to add a gloss coat on top of the paint to lock it all in, add a little sheen to it, and also add even more transparency to the paint. But even with the help of the airbrush, we're not done yet. Since we still have a bit of hand painting to do, starting with a coat of primer for, well, the coat. Then the inside of the coat gets a layer of barbarian flesh for this salmon-like color. And for the inside of the coat, I'd also done something else new to me, mixing my own paints. Since Cipher has this opal pearlescent-like sheen to his coat, I wanted to find a miniature paint that could get me the same effect. Only problem is that there are only basic acrylic paints that can offer this type of sheen. But if I use those, the paint is going to be way too thick for painting on this scale. This is gonna leave way too many brush strokes. But if I thin it down, then it's gonna lose a lot of the pearlescent sheen because of how thin the pigments are going to be mixed. So I turn to the next best thing, mica powders. These come in a lot of special variants for resin projects, including a pearlescent one. And I've also seen some other miniature YouTubers do the same thing with good results. So why not try it here? So first I filled an empty paint container with some of the powder, then I add in some paint medium and mix it all very thoroughly. And skablam! We got a pearlescent miniature paint! Now I can apply this to the outside of Cipher's coat, although I'd prepped it a little bit beforehand by adding a layer of white on top of the primer to have a bit of a base for the pearlescent paint, since it did not cover that well from what I saw in my tests. And as you might have already seen, I'd also applied a bit of black to some of the parts of Cipher, because these now get a layer of shining silver to add the metallics to this resident of the Order sector. and these metallic shiny rings that every resin has. Of course, we also make one for the little guy too. Another thing I was testing with were these hexagonal shapes for Cipher's code. To try and emulate these on a smaller scale, I'd applied these hexagons all over this other Cipher. So, if you made your own, would you leave him as he was? Or do you also like the hexagons? Personally, I liked a little bit of extra detail that the hexagons gave, but these were a little bit too obvious at this point. Like, they were too distracting from the rest of the figure. So to fix this, I had a plan to add another layer of a mix of white and the pearlescence on top of the coat. Since these two paints together don't really cover that well, I am able to use this fact to add another layer on top to knock down the hexagons a bit without completely losing them over another layer of paint. And here you can also see how I was able to make the pattern using these two zigzag lines where the peaks and valleys were aligned. And then I just needed to add some vertical lines to combine the two to make for all of these interlinked hexagons. Then I cut another coat of white and pearlescent on top, which you can see really knocked down the hexagons, but still let it shine through, just as I liked it. However, thanks to the mix of the two, it lost a little bit of that pearlescent shine, for which I specifically made the paint. So, before the end, I wanted to give the coat and the little guy's pants one more coat of pearlescence. And to finish this side order amiibo, I wanted to add something more to the base. So, since the order sector is filled with all of this white ash and all this bleached coral, I wanted to try and add a bit of that to the amiibo. So, for the coral, I was able to use a bit of air drying clay to make the basic shape on top of this wireframe. Once this has fully dried, I covered this in some super glue and some decorative gravel that I got from our local dollar store. But if you want to try and make some of this effect yourself, because of the large surface area and the porous texture of the air drying clay, a lot of fumes come from the super glue, which is bad to inhale in such large quantities. So now with the glue dry and the decorative gravel on top for the coral texture, I was able to airbrush on a coat of white primer. And now I've just finished applying a coat of watered down mummy's ropes for the lower areas of the coral, which then get topped with a dry brush of white afterwards. Now I can use the little end of the wireframe to superglue the coral onto a little hole that I drilled into the amiibo base. Then I add some more superglue to this with some baking soda to both set the glue and to give it even more body for an even bulkier connection, because we don't want this falling off all of a sudden. Then I use a little bit more superglue and spread it around the base using a toothpick, making sure to not get any on both Cipher and the little jellyfish. On top of this, I then sprinkle some fine sand to adhere to the glue, to make for the ash effect of the order sector. As soon as the glue had dried, I then added a little bit more of that watered down mummy's ropes to have it all match with the coral. At last, I only needed to brush on some dark gray spray paint for the color of the Splatoon series Amiibo bases. And yes, I know how contradictory that sounds, brushing on the spray paint, but no way in heck am I going to be able to cover all of the figure well enough to be able to safely spray paint the edges of the base without getting overspray everywhere or it leaking through the masking tape. Better to play it safe and sacrifice a cheap tiny brush to apply the paint on the edges of the base. But with all of that done, we've officially finished our Splatoon 3 side order Cipher custom amiibo. Hey Creagears, Roboy here, and we hope you enjoyed our take at a Cipher custom amiibo. Also, if you guys are not yet subscribed, please consider supporting the channel. We're so close to 4K subscribers. And we've got something very exciting planned for 5,000 subscribers. So, you guys better subscribe, so we can show off this big thing that we've been working on in the background. Oh, I can't wait to show that off. And also, look at this amazing piece of fan art that we got from Crush in our Discord server. Thank you again so much, Crush, for the amazing fan art. And if you ever want to submit a piece of fan art, you can send it either to the WVD Discord server or to @WVD-Roboy on Blue Sky. And in the server, you can also find this amazing reference sheet for my updated design by our friend XLstar on Blue Sky. Or if you want to show off some of your own creations like amiibos, drawings, cosplays, or whatever else creative that you've made, or if you want some tips directly from us or the rest of the community, all creative and not yet creative people are welcome to join our community here on YouTube and in the Discord server linked below. But that's going to be all from us for now. Keep those creative gears turning, and we will see you guys in our next video.